All right. Howdy, everyone, and happy Sunday. It is time for Sunday live stream. And we are going to continue working on this fine gentleman here and bring him into well, just continue to chip away at this detailing. You know, this can be some of the most time-consuming process. I would say this is pass 2 of 3, maybe, that we want to do on this sculpt. First pass was our block out, which we knocked out in one video, took a couple hours. And second pass is sort of our general refinement of those shapes, which we're kind of about halfway through here, I'd say. And then our third pass is going to be you know, real detailing. We're going to get down into the crispy crumbly bits here. All these little bumps and crevices, you know, just kind of bump up the resolution of everything, give it some nice textural detail. Might use some alphas there to save a little time, but you know, as with most things on this guy, I'm not really particularly concerned about the timeline here. I think we're moving along at a good pace. But yeah, if you are just joining for the first time, or if you're coming back, just go ahead and say hi in the chat. I apparently these streams, since I started them back up a few weeks ago, have been getting to some people outside of the usual subscribers. The algorithm has picked it up and thrown it somewhere else. Somebody commented that they were a new person, so that's good. I just assumed that after this long time of not having put anything on my channel, I would have been I don't know, blacklisted or something. But no, it's good to see there's some new people and some returning folks popped in the last one, the one before. So yeah, to all of you, welcome. And I'm just gonna get into it here. Feel free to shout out if you have any ideas or anything, any lore that you want to build into this guy. I was getting a little bit into that last time, talking about it's potentially a, you know, intelligent consciousness at the very least, maybe even a human consciousness, kind of trapped in this awkward crustacean body, and all he wants to do is connect and make friends with people, but they get scared of him and run away. And he can't communicate with them because he doesn't have human mouth parts and or human hands. So I don't know, kind of a misunderstood, sympathetic character we got here. But anyway, so we kind of touched on a lot of the torso and head parts, brought them into a decent level of detail here. So we're just going to continue on down. I'm just going to continue on down the torso and the legs, and we'll get those. And then the arms. We're going to do some asymmetry with the arms. So I'll probably split that up. But we might do some asymmetry elsewhere, but we'll see how it looks. We may save some of that for the detailing. But let's bring up our reference here. If you haven't seen it, this was the concept we did in the first couple of videos. Just kind of a quick pass. We didn't get into color much, but just sort of a sketch to help define the sculpt. So I'm going to be referencing that, as well as some of these other cool critters I found on the internet. All right, let's get into it here. Just got to clean up some of this stuff And mostly what I'm doing is, where's my damn standard? I always forget my ZBrush shortcuts. I'm just gonna go in here and kind of clean some of these edges up and help kind of define some of these plates. You know, part of what makes this guy a little bit distinct from your average crustacean is there's a bit more, and this also speaks to his size too, which is an important design consideration. But there's a little bit more, what do I call this? Reticulation. God, I don't even know if that's a word. That sounds right. Basically like curling and folding in on itself of the edges of some of these plates, which you don't see so much in our typical crustaceans. We typically see kind of a smooth, uninterrupted edge, especially with larger pieces like this. That probably helps with aerodynamics, shell integrity, stuff like that. But since this guy is sort of larger, he's kind of human-sized. You know, generally shapes tend to get a bit more complex. You know, you're basically taking the same biological principles, but you're applying them on a larger scale. So, so with this guy, I'm just sort of imagining there's a bit more complexity to these pieces. And it also speaks a little bit to maybe the fact that he's not much of a swimmer, you know, even though he is probably water dwelling, you know, he doesn't really have, you know, he's kind of got some vestigial swimming elements, but you know, he's obviously bipedal and spends at least some of his time on land. So I would think that he can probably swim pretty well, but I don't think like getting the most efficient, you know, most aerodynamic or hydrodynamic construction on some of these parts is a huge consideration with his design. So there's a little bit, and you know, plus it just looks cool, you know. But it does, I think mostly actually it just helps reinforce the scale. You know, if we made a lot of these parts very smooth and simple, you know, it would read as smaller. That's you know, if you're ever designing anything, that's something you can do to help reinforce scale. Like obviously, if we are putting this in a film or game environment, which we're going to when we're done, we're going to put this in Blender and set up some kind of scene there. You know, it will show some of that scale, you know, but you don't want your scene scale to be the only thing driving the perception of scale. You know, there are a lot of other cues that you can incorporate into your design so that even this guy in a vacuum, you know, if we look at this, if we look at the shapes we're using, we are, you know, this would give us an approximate idea of the scale. You know, you wouldn't look at this guy and think he's the size of your hand or of a crab. And that's partly because he's sort of human shaped, but also because of the kind of shape language we're using. So it's an important consideration. I'm not going to get too far into these. I really want to do some of these wrinkly parts. I'm going to switch. Let's bring this down a little bit. I want to switch my Brush alpha 2, alpha 48. Gives us a little bit more of a smooth kind of skin texture when we're in our clay build. And this I really want to contrast with the plates. You know, I want this to look very kind of organic. I'm getting a little bit too detailed here though, but I just want to get the kind of general gesture of it. This is another area where we're kind of deviating from the typical crustacean material set, if you want to call it that. We are adding kind of humanish, humanoid skin underneath. Or at least, I don't know, kind of more animal skin versus, yeah, crustaceans don't tend to have so much of that. Okay. Let's keep moving down. We've got these hip plates defined. I'm just going to give them a little bit more interior definition here. I like building out this interplay between the sort of larger, I don't know, kind of like bubbly volumes that you see, you know, on the crustaceans with the kind of creases that you see along the edge. We did a lot of that last time, and I want to bring some of that into these pieces. All right, that's pretty good. I think like maybe the overall shape could use a bit of tweaking. But I don't know, it's not like it's inconceivable. Let's just leave it for now. Maybe this we can tuck in a little bit. You don't want the child subdivision basically to inherit the too much of the wobbliness of the blockout sculpt. In my head, I'm using using like game editor language because I've been learning to code in Unity actually, which is something I think I already mentioned this, but something I never really conceived for myself as something that I would be capable of or even interested in. And yeah, I don't know, I was saying the other day, that's just kind of one of the cool things about getting older, I think, is you start to let go of those ideas about what kind of things you are supposed to do, what kind of based on your perceived self-identity, because we develop these identities sort of implicitly as we're growing up, and then from those identities we extract information about what kind of things we're supposed to be doing. You know, like I was always, you know, art, creative stuff, music. Yeah, you know, I was always doing that, so it was easy for me to continue to believe I was the kind of person who did those things. I kind of enjoyed math, but I never really pursued it much. I was a terrible student in most respects for a lot of high school and elementary school. So yeah, I really enjoyed geometry and algebra and stuff, but I never got a chance to dive too deeply into that. And then in college, I got into philosophy and I studied logic, and I was like, this is really cool. I really enjoyed this. But it's so abstract, you know, it was more with respect to um, defining arguments and debate and reinforcing principles of or basically using logic to demonstrate certain points based on certain premises. But now I've come to find that a lot of those skills and definitions and kind of equations are very applicable to coding. And so yeah, that's been a really fun, really challenging. Like I've not been tested so thoroughly in my patience and my just mental abilities with anything like that in a long time. And it's sometimes it's like just close enough to make me kind of want to, be like, ah, screw it. Like maybe I'm in over my head. I'm kind of out of my element. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm taking courses. I'm like trying to follow along. And so I'll have these moments like, oh yes, finally I understand it. I can do anything here. And then I'll be following along with these courses and they start like, they start describing all these things they're doing in the code, and part of my brain just kind of shuts off and it just becomes noise. And I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on right now. And you can copy it, to try to get a similar result, but it's not learning, and and if you're just copying all the code, you don't really gain the tools you need to change it or fix it if something comes up. So I'm trying very hard to understand the code as I'm copying it, but sometimes it's just a little bit beyond me. So I'm kind of thinking, maybe I did take kind of like one introductory C# course, and I'm not really liking this shape here. This feels very kind of like contrived. Let me rework this. Sorry, I just gotta. And by the way, this is this is what it usually is at this point. If nobody steps in and says anything in the chat, you're just gonna hear some very long-winded ramblings about potentially unrelated things that are bouncing around my brain. So, hope people find some of that remotely interesting. But if you don't, you can just mute you can just mute the video and just watch what I'm doing here, or listen to your music or whatever, I don't know, whatever floats your boat. Yeah, but all right, I think that's a little bit better. So what was I talking about? Coding. Yeah, but when I get hooked on like this when something actually works, as intended, or better yet, you're not just copying something and you actually try to create something and you're like, there's no way this is going to work. And then it works. That's a really incredible feeling. That's what kind of keeps you coming back, or keeps me coming back at least. And I haven't quite given up yet. I just have some. Well, it occurred to me too, and this is funny because I never conceived of myself as, or expected for myself to end up working in in the game industry or on games. Growing up for me, they were always just kind of like a vice for me. Um, and I always felt like it was something that was working against me and kind of like a waste of my time. And something that I enjoyed, I think, you know, to an unhealthy degree. And so I would kind of go back and forth between like just completely diving in, completely losing myself, can't pry myself away, forget about everything else in the world. And then I would come back and be like, ugh, now I got to figure my life out now. I got to, because this is not, you know, and it, and so, but I always, art for me was like more of a healthy, creative outlet and something that I was, um, I got an early start on it. Um, I was usually pretty skilled, at least, relative to the small environment that I was a part of. That that lesson I had to learn later, after I graduated college, that you know, being the being skilled in a very small in a small group in a very limited context does not guarantee any kind of success. And I think that was something I had to unlearn uh, over a long period of time. Um, and it's a good lesson to learn. Some people come. It's interesting hearing about how people come into art, from different angles and stuff. Like I used to talk a lot about Marco Bucci and his story because I find that really fascinating. Kind of a little bit of the opposite problem that I had, and one isn't necessarily better than the other, and they can potentially, get you to the same place, but it depends upon how you react and respond to them. But his story, I think, and by the way, if this is from his book Creativity in the Campfire, which is a very really great short, but insightful read. I highly recommend it. But he talks about having grown up being kind of, I don't know. I hope I'm not mischaracterizing this, but being kind of bad at art. Like he really liked drawing, but there was always somebody better, or maybe a few people that were better, and had this kind of head start. Um, and the funny thing is, a lot of those people who are initially skilled or who grew up getting some kind of training or some kind of head start or whatever, a lot of them didn't develop the kind of discipline to continue their learning and their practice as they got older. But he like really learned how to be disciplined, how to improve at a steady rate, and how to stick with it, how to navigate challenges and failures and obstacles and stuff like that. And so as he continued on that trajectory, he just got better and better. He started learning how to paint and all this color theory stuff, and now he's well, look him up. He's incredible. He has a really really unique um, and and um, powerful style, and he's also a great teacher. Powerful is not a great adjective, I know, but you're gonna have to bear with me as I try to speak and sculpt at the same time. Um, but anyway, I found that really interesting because I kind of found myself on the other side of that, where I started drawing early, and I kind of used it as a way um, to cope, and kind of as like I don't know, as a trying not to cast too much judgment on myself in the way I'm phrasing this, but as like kind of a safe place to explore ideas and just to kind of lose myself essentially. And that was enough motivation for me to, continue to pursue it and to get better at it and to try to understand it and learn things. But Uh, but you know, I was depending upon that kind of like emotional drive to keep me going. And then as I got older and like you know, that drive is not a constant. Like you can, and that's another really compelling principle from creativity in the campfire is like you can't depend on inspiration. It's great when you get it, but you know, this is something you have to, you know, most people learn if you end up pursuing art, you learn this pretty early that like there are times when you just are not going to feel like making something, or you're going to get blocked or something, or stuck at the blank page. um and you know, you're going to have to figure out how to navigate that and push through it. um Man, I'm getting way too micro here. I should have smoothed a lot of these surfaces first, but whatever. I'm going to do that now. So anyway, the point being, I had to learn discipline and practice, and you know, developing strong creative habits, and practice habits, which I'm still frankly learning. And I think compared to I often kind of um, I think yeah, I think I have a ways to go there. I'm not nearly as disciplined as I could be about this in particular, but I'm kind of just exploring some other things right now, so I'm not particularly concerned about it. But um, yeah, a lot of that stuff you have to learn, and especially if you're going to pursue a career or try to get a job, you know, doing this kind of stuff, like, you know, other people are going to expect that of you as well. Um, so I can't remember why I started down that particular tangent, but there it is. So I kind of realized that um, I'm realizing as I'm working that a lot of the, like I was saying earlier, a lot of the wobbliness of the initial sculpt, I'm kind of accidentally baking it into my details. You know, there's just some areas that are kind of, I mean, it's organic, but there's a difference between organic forms and forms that look lazy or accidental. I think it's easy to just try to excuse, um, try to pawn off one onto the other, but um, so I'm just kind of taking some of these larger shapes that I really um, didn't really take the time to smooth out properly. And also, it's not set in stone. You know, a lot of the stuff we can fix. We're probably going to do another Z remesh, and that'll um, help to refine some of these parts that are just a little bit wobbly. I'm not. That's the great thing about working with subdivisions is, you know, you don't have to worry so much about destructive sculpting. And the other thing too is like I don't really have much definition on what these legs are supposed to be. So I think I'm just gonna, I see some little knobbly bits, so I'm probably gonna incorporate some of those, you know, but I think overall they're supposed to be kind of a place of rest, so I'm not gonna abuse it. But I'm just gonna create a little bit of an intentional variation, let's say. I haven't had anyone chime in yet to let me know if my audio is coming through today. So if you're watching and and you're hearing things, just give me a thumbs up or something. Probably should have said that earlier. But I haven't had any audio issues so far. I'm just using the same setup. I think it's pretty safe to assume it's coming through, but do give me a shout if something isn't coming through, or any issues with the video or audio or anything. But it's been pretty good. Last time I got a weird internet outage. It wasn't even an outage. I'm not really sure what happened. It just kind of disconnected for a while, and then it didn't really tell me, so we missed about 10 minutes of content. But I'm sure it wasn't super important. All right, let's continue around the back here. Just going to, you know what? Yeah, I gotta turn on my AC. Hang on one second. All right. Let us continue here. Don't forget to hydrate. It's very important. All right. This tail, I remember we were having some trouble with this last time, so I think we need to... The geometry is getting pretty crazy here. A little bit out of... but I think we can... I forgot to check last time, too, if the air conditioning was making too much noise, but nobody complained about it, so... Maybe we'll do a little... Should we do a little spike in the center there? That'd be crazy. Is that crazy? I think that's gonna work. Yeah. It's cool. It's kind of the fun thing about the Sculpt phase 2 is like you can kind of bounce around a little bit. It's very similar to sketching or painting, where you just kind of forget for a while, becomes a little bit automatic, and you just sort of can turn off your brain and just make whatever comes to mind here. I guess that's probably part of what appealed to me about all this stuff too, as a youngin'. Just get into that flow state, and then, you know, you just kind of forget about everything for a while. And yeah. It's looking better, a little bit more intentional with our forms here. Just try to correct some of this wobbliness. This section here does not look intentional. I need to make a clear design choice here. And again, what I was saying is that the geometry is getting so distorted at this point where it might not be worth putting too much time in here before we do a remesh, but I'm just going to get it as, or a, yeah, Z remesh. I'm just going to get it as close as I can, though. Should this come out like that? Yeah, why not? Yeah, this is just a weird intersection here. I'm gonna look back at my reference. What did I do here? I'm kind of deviating a little bit. Yeah, see there's like this tangent forming here. And I don't care for it. I think I'm just gonna push this under. There needs to be like some clear overlap. And I think this is the way we're gonna do it. See, again, this is what I was saying before about about 3D artists, 3D modelers needing to be designers. And that doesn't mean they're doing the doesn't mean they're doing the bulk of the designing or the designing at the higher level, but they're designing on a micro level. So knowing those design principles as you're going through, you can spot places where your sculpt is not, you know, where the shapes are not working well together. Stuff like that. Independent of the concept, which in this case doesn't provide that much specificity for this area. And I think in 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have a concept that spells everything out for you. Yeah, it's great if you can get that, but, you know, production crunch is real. Or, you know, I mean, you may have limited access to, you may have too few concept artists, or you may have no concept artists, which is not ideal if you're part of a production pipeline, but sometimes it happens, you know, or like somebody has to drop out or something, or they just don't have enough time to give you like to give every concept time and attention they deserve. Or you might just have an art director who's like throws a napkin sketch your way. So it's going to be varying degrees of expectation. So in terms of how fleshed out the concept is going to be, so you might as well take some time to learn these design principles, which I will say, like I've said before, big, medium, small, and just variety. It's going to do the bulk of the heavy lifting there. Avoiding tangents, avoiding repetition, unless it's intentional repetition. It's going to do a lot of the work for you, but sometimes it's a little bit less, you know, tangible than that. Um, and it just kind of takes practice to get a sense for it. Um, and I, yeah, not saying that I'm a design expert or anything, but it wasn't something I even really paid much attention to. For I've been a I've known, you know, how to draw and paint and all that kind of stuff for far longer than I've had any idea about what a good design is. So, um, and that showed, definitely showed in my earlier work. You know, you do the best with what you have, but I didn't realize how important it was until I took Hardy Fowler's Concept Art Academy course, which I highly recommend. Anything from Hardy, if you are learning how to do 2D art or design or concept art, um, he's he's the man for that kind of stuff. Really great teacher, incredible artist, um, and I took one of his courses many years ago, um, and it really just completely deconstructed and reconstructed for me what design is and what it means in art. Um, I think for me, design was just kind of always this sort of ineffable um, thing that was thrown around, you know, or just subjective, you know, like this is good design, this is bad design, and yeah, I mean, you know, like most things, there are subjective elements of it. There's, you know, there's always going to be some of that. Um, but I mean, when you learn some principles and then you actually apply them, and you're like, oh no, this definitely looks better. There are a lot of things like that where you're like, no, um, this is a very clear and reliable way to get good looking results. And yeah, having a few of those tools in your belt, I think as a 3D artist, that goes, um, I think is often overlooked in my very limited experience. Um, you know, and I guess everyone's, you know, different too. And if you really have no interest in design, I think there are opportunities and pipelines where um, people can accommodate that. You know, some people are just really want to translate what they see and not have to make any creative decisions along the way. And I think that's, if you're that kind of person, um, you know, it's not impossible to find opportunities with that mindset, but I think you're gonna just, you know, your work will improve and opportunities will expand if you also have those design skills. I don't know. Of course, everything's kind of thrown out the window right now, um, temporarily at least. Just in terms of opportunities, it's kind of hard to say what works and what doesn't work because it's the game is changing so fast. The rules are changing, or at least, you know, um, temporarily. I don't know. I have no idea. Um, what you know, I'm generally going off the assumption that um, that these kinds of fundamental skills are still valuable, um, which I think they are. I think they are, and I think it's going to take people, maybe not necessarily people. decision makers, corporations, etc., the people with the money, it's going to take them a while to catch on to the fact that um, these skills are still valuable and indispensable, indisposable, indispensable. I don't know. Yeah, but maybe they won't. Maybe they will not. And, then we got bigger problems. Of course, that's what the whole world is facing right now. You know, it's not just art and everything. So I don't know. It's not worth worrying about too much. I think just gotta keep going and doing what you love and hope that, hope that people also appreciate it and enjoy it. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe the digital medium itself is now becoming so oversaturated and nebulous and un ungrounded, I guess, that there will be a shift back to traditional forms of media. Um, and that's why for me, I'm like, well, all this sculpting, all these digital tools I'm learning, um, yeah, there's an aspect of it which doesn't translate, um, back to traditional skills, but there's a lot of it that does. So, all this stuff I'm doing in ZBrush, or at least 90% of it, I can go back to a clay studio and replicate it and bring those skills with me. Um, do I have to know how to work with subdivisions or reproject geometry to do that? No. And yeah, I'd be kind of disappointed because I do like a lot of the technical aspects of the digital workflow. Um, so I really hope that it doesn't completely lose its value. Um, and like I said, like game design. I mean, oh yeah, this is what I was going to say earlier. I'm coming back to in a very roundabout way. I never thought of myself as someone who would end up being interested in creating games. But when I think back on it, it's just some of my earliest, there was a reason that that medium was so compelling to me. It's an all encompassing, it's sort of the apex of all the creative media. It involves art, it involves music, it involves logic and um, function and lighting and composition and writing and all this kind of stuff. Like everything that all these different sort of skills that I've really enjoyed pursuing independently. Um, I've realized they all converge in this one kind of basic medium, which is definitely kind of a different perspective than I had for a long time. And I think, like any form of media, I guess, or any form of entertainment, it has as much potential to damage as it does to to heal or to inspire or improve life. You know, but that's not to say that it can't do those things, and that's not to say that even having a brief reprieve um, to explore a fantasy world, that's not in itself inherently destructive, even if you're not strictly bringing those experiences back to your life. Or, but I think in a good piece of media, you are, even if it's not consciously, you are bringing you know pieces of that story or those visuals or something back into your day-to-day experience, and that's I think what makes good art. um and so with games being a if you know if games are an art form, which I think there's plenty of evidence in support of that, because they're basically a composite. They are an art form because they are a composite of art forms. What separates, I guess what pulls it away from the definition of being art is when it becomes kind of soulless and driven by greed or uh, by different motivations, I guess, other than the pursuit of a compelling creative vision. So, and there's a lot of that. I think from the inception of games, there's been both. There's been the pursuit of compelling creative vision, and there's been greed and addictive design practices. And sometimes there's both. A lot of my a lot of my favorite games, I steer away from a lot of them now, but especially growing up, I didn't really know the difference between something that is addictive and something that is compelling and inspiring. And a lot of games will be both, and that's kind of a tricky thing to navigate. Now I understand better that there is a niche that I'm really interested in, which is games that have kind of they have an in and out point, basically, and are designed to deliver a concise, meaningful vision in a way that doesn't, keep you there, beyond your own intent to be there. Essentially, it's not basically hijacking your more base primitive instincts to keep you in the experience beyond when it's useful to you. So, and there are a lot of games that do that. Short play times, simple, concise UI that doesn't, constantly hit you with dopamine spikes, or, I guess UX more than UI. That's what I mean. I feel like Ubisoft games are, a great example of a little bit, in my personal preference and experience, they're just generally too far over the line in terms of creating a pleasurable, addictive response when weighed against the art that goes into them. And that's not to say that there's incredible art and creativity that goes into a lot of these games, but you're intended to spend like 100 hours doing this thing, and they develop all these kind of repetitive systems that are really designed to hook you and keep you going back in a way that doesn't do anything outside of just keep you there and keep you locked in this kind of loop. So I tend to avoid those, now. And if I find sometimes I'll find something where I'm just like, okay, it's 10 to 15 hours, doesn't really demand too much from you, has strong art direction, a good story, or like some really interesting mechanics. That's a good example. Played through Frostpunk recently, which is really got me hooked for a solid couple of days, solid week. But just really great mechanics. There wasn't too much of a story around it, but just really satisfying strategy and really challenging too. And that's also what I get out of them, is like finding some kind of challenge and putting myself up against that, some sort of cognitive challenge. Those are the games that kind of keep me in there. Those are also the pursuits that kind of keep me coming back. I guess that's more of a personal problem for me. I even run into it with the coding stuff, where sometimes I'll get stuck. I'll get stuck on one problem, and I can't move on with my life until I've solved it, or just completely spent myself to the point where I have no, uh, I have nothing left I have no means of solving it, basically. But I've lost entire days to one very specific problem, because I can't let it go. That's definitely a me problem. And it manifests in game design too, like if I find a game that like is really challenging me in a way where I'm determined to overcome it, or to, then that'll really keep me coming back. And that's not always necessarily a good thing. But anyway, the point being, if there is a point, the point being, I am starting to shift my mindset on what games can be, and look beyond their, destructive potential, or at the very least counterproductive potential. I won't say destructive is maybe a bit of a rare case, although it's certainly possible. And start to think about, okay, this is this is one thing. This is a product that I could potentially create, that where I am contributing up to 100% of the input. And the only thing that was kind of holding me back from that, which is, it's not a small thing. It's basically half of the whole equation, but that is the programming and the game design, which is something I never studied, something I never even really thought myself capable of, or necessarily interested in. And now I'm getting into it, and I'm like, this is tickling my brain in a way that nothing else really does. So I keep getting pulled back into it, even when it's feels like it's completely beyond me. But B, it's challenging, but I think given enough time, it's not impossible that I could create something with it. And that's a really cool idea. Obviously trying to create a game on your own is kind of absurd in a lot of ways, but it's been done, and successfully many times. And I don't know, I'm captivated by the idea, and also motivated by the fact that I'll be honest, I get frustrated when I don't have complete creative control. And that can also be, that's also a personal problem for me that I'm going to have to learn how to deal with, because, collaboration is essential in most things in life. And certainly in making games or working on any creative project that has a significant scope, And you know, you have to be willing to relinquish some of that creative control when there are other people involved in creative decision making. I think I'm getting better at that, but it's it's kind of a it's always a bit of a struggle for me. Um, and sometimes, you know, I think I want to be able to work on that personally, but also um, but also but also like you know, attend to that impulse and explore it for myself. Be like, yeah, if you want create complete control, figure out a way to do that. You know, what can you create completely on your own? Um, so I've created music. I've recorded an album, which I will say that was not completely on my own. In fact, that was highly collaborative um, in many ways, but it was self motivated, self driven, and I worked closely with a really great producer for that slash recording engineer, and I had some great musicians join tracks there. But even then, I really struggled with some things that um, I couldn't really decide. Not that you know that were kind of outside of my control. That process that was difficult for me. Um, and you know, there were some things where I think I needed to be more confident and assertive about my instincts about some things, which I didn't at the time. I wasn't really like totally um, totally sure of my own intuitions and instincts. I guess I mean I was they made sense to me, but I wasn't like prepared to really stand my ground on a lot of those things. But anyway, it turned out well. But what else? I've written things, you know. Been working on this book for a while that, yeah, in itself is something I want to put time into. But um, I don't know. I do want to try to adapt a little bit with the kind of, I mean, not a lot, but with the kind of media that people are interested in. If I want to make some, you know, not to say that people aren't interested in books, but I think less people are interested in books. You know, for better or for worse, probably for worse. Sounds like people just can't read anymore. Actually, is the sense I'm getting, which is a larger larger issue. I was talking to my friend about that the other day because I don't really know that many people below the age of like, you know, 27 anymore. It sounds like there's some problems that are going on with reading and education and all that kind of stuff. People losing those basic skills, which is, yeah, it's kind of freaky. But I don't know. I'm also very much resigned to the fact that whatever I'm working on, whatever I'm creating is not going to be for everyone. Um, whether that's the content or the medium that I choose. Um, I would almost go as far as to say that if you are really creating work that is authentic to you and that speaks to you and that is inspired, then it's not going to be for everyone. In fact, it may not be for most people. There are a few exceptions, of course, but I mean, you know, take something like Lord of the Rings, the books or the films. I think like are nearly universally acknowledged as some of the best. Uh, let's just take the films. You know, as one of the best trilogies of all time. Full stop. Probably the best fantasy trilogy of all time. Film, at least. Um, but you know, so or the Beatles. You know, and I feel like the Beatles is shifting. It's like been the Beatles have been hyped for so long and by so many people, that I feel like the general sentiment is sort of shifting back now, where it's like, okay, yeah, we get it, the Beatles. And I think people are like, people are much more skeptical than they used to be, just because of how universally they've been accepted among musicians and non musicians and the general public. And I think yeah, maybe there's some merit to that. I grew up with the Beatles, um, so they have kind of a special. I have like a special nostalgic connection with them, and I think a lot of their songwriting, especially the music itself and the chord changes and stuff underneath, um, is really strong and really compelling. But yeah, probably maybe uh, don't necessarily merit all the hype they received. As many have pointed out, there are a lot of other artists who are doing uh, creating stuff of similar or exceeding quality around the time and the time since, that have not got that much attention. But anyway, the point being, there are very few exceptions. But in general, you know, like I think some of the things that I personally love, and you know, to an obsessive degree, almost are the things that really kind of speak to me in a way that almost conveys understanding of me in a very personal way. And I think a lot of people can connect with that idea, where it's like that music that speaks to you, it's like it was written for you, or about you or something. And I don't necessarily mean in like an egotistical way. I mean just like in terms of your perspective and your experience and your conscious experience of the world. Um, and maybe it's just how you interpret that thing. But in another example, one of my possibly my favorite band over the past several years, it's been this band called Animals as Leaders. Um, and sometimes people will ask me, they'll be like, you know, what is your, you know, what kind of music you're listening to, or like, what's your favorite artist? And I'll tell them like, I'm really only listening to this one band, kind of over and over and over again. Why? Because it does something for me that nothing else does, and it also does something that music of similar genres um, doesn't do for me. Uh, I've never been like, I think when I was younger, I kind of got into some metal stuff, but I've never been much of a metalhead. And this band is, I think could be technically classified as like instrumental gent metal, basically, which is kind of a, in itself, kind of a niche genre. But you know, there's no, anytime I'm recommended some other similar artist or something that you know, on paper sounds like what they're doing, I'm like, no, it's not. It's not for me. There's something about what they specifically are doing that is almost independent of the genre or the medium itself that really speaks to me. And I can try to articulate it sometimes, like, but so yeah, a lot of the things that I really enjoy are very specific, and also definitely not for everyone. I don't even generally share. You know, people ask me, they're like, "What are you listening to? What's your favorite band and stuff?" I'm like, "I'll tell you, but like, you're not gonna like it." Like, and don't you know? Sometimes people they'll like listen to it, and um, you can see on their face like, "Oh yeah, okay, wow, you know, that's that's really cool." And I'm like, just don't. You don't have to pretend. Like, I know this isn't for you. Um, don't bullshit me. Um, and but that makes it even more like kind of special, because I don't know, it speaks to some understanding of of experience, or of my experience, that it feels very personal. It feels, you feel seen. um and I was talking about this the other day, but I was also talking about this with a friend of mine yesterday, or and it's just like, when I feel like one thing people often miss in terms of what they want out of their relationships with other people is this idea of being understood. Like, yeah, people want love and all that kind of stuff, but um, I think for me personally, and I think maybe for a lot of people, but it just doesn't get as much attention. The idea of being understood um, is almost more important than being loved or getting affection or you know having people spend time with you or spend money on you or whatever it is. Um, because yeah, it's a very rare thing, and it takes a lot of time to understand someone usually. Um, but sometimes it happens by accident, and that's always really interesting and compelling. And I think in the case of music and art, sometimes you stumble upon something that I think because the artist is really funneling their specific vision and their kind of authentic experience into it, there might be elements of it where they're like, wow, this is really um, speaking to me. Um, and I don't think you can really give people that experience if you are trying to create something that appeals to as many people as possible. In fact, I think the more you move in that direction, um, the less you're going to get that result. So I'm rambling a lot here, and I'm working very slowly, and I'm not really paying attention to where I'm going. I'm just kind of bouncing around. So, um, not making nearly as much progress here as I had hoped, but I don't really care. I think it's fine. I'm enjoying it. That's what I'm here for. That's what we're doing. I'm gonna take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're gonna come back, and I think we're gonna finish out the hour. Um, and I'm gonna try to get these legs knocked out at the very least. Maybe the arms too, but we'll see. Okay, I'll be back in 5. Okay, we're back. Time to get on down with these legs. These crusty crab legs. I bet this guy will be good in a stew. You know? Some good lobster meat in there. Lobster's not very much meat. You know? A little disappointing. I talked about this already. I have to apologize to anyone who is going through all of these videos, this series, which I guess it is at this point, and who is hearing me repeat all of these ideas and stories and whatnot. This can be adjusted. There we go. But also, if you did that, congratulations, because it's a lot of content to watch, and if you're just turning these on and letting them rip, you know, I commend you, and I appreciate it. You know, really gets my view hours up. Because I'm not making any other videos right now. Not that that's my goal here, but hey, you know, if I can get some monetization going, you know, I wouldn't be super disappointed in that. But it's not my goal really. I just started, you know, doing this again because I don't know, it's fun. And I don't know, maybe I need an audience for my running thought processes. maybe, maybe that's all this is. It's my public therapy session. And if you want to see some cool art, you're gonna have to sit through that, or you're gonna have to ask me something or give me something else to talk about. Otherwise, this is gonna be a very one-ended, one-directional interaction. But no, we're here for the art. We're here for the art. I'm here for the art. This is fun. I wouldn't, you know, this has been great because I wouldn't be doing this necessarily every week or every Sunday if I wasn't doing these streams now, you know. So this is really what this is an excuse for me to work on some personal stuff. And actually, when I started doing this, my thought was like, oh well, you know, I'll just go live and just work on whatever I was going to work on anyway. And I have some kind of sense of accountability, and I didn't really expect to start creating a Lobster Man. It'll happen very quick within that first stream. I thought I was going to sketch a whole bunch of different ideas. Thought I was going to work on some concepts for my this kind of game idea I've been thinking about. Nope, didn't do any of that. I'm just making a crustacean. But it'll be good for the portfolio for sure. You know, and it's just a fun challenge. I don't think I've created something quite like this. And yeah, I mean, yeah, like I could be doing this just on my own time and privacy of my my workspace here, but I don't know, you know, why not share it? You know, what's the harm? And I don't know, maybe people will even learn a thing or two. I hope this is at least partially educational, if not entertaining, or one or the other, you know, or both. That would be wild. Um, so, you know, if you get something out of this, that's great. Let me know. Send me a comment or something. Like, hey, you know, um, this is cool, and I enjoy this. Uh, and I will say thank you. I also enjoy this. Um, glad this is of mutual benefit. Anyway, I'm a big fan of these skin fold kind of things. I've really been enjoying like kind of ugly, messed up, um, droopy skin and fat. Um, show you a example. Oh man, I forgot about the troll. I gotta get back to the troll. I was working on this for a while. God, where did I leave off on it? Let me find it. Boy, V2. Z-tool. I tend to save so many. Okay, ZBrush tool. Let's see what this looks like. I don't know which version this is. I see feet. Where are you, buddy? Oh my god. My computer's dying here. What is this? Got duplicates. I think I sent this to Marvelous to get all this cloth stuff. I think we have a bunch of duplicates. Let me find an earlier version. My poly refinements. Oh man, I gotta get back to this guy. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. What is this? Why are these all so weird? There we go. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This was really fun. I gotta finish this guy out. Um, I I got part of the way through the low poly, and I got distracted. But like, look at all these sexy skin folds. Oh man, this stuff really tickles me. I'm so sorry if it doesn't for you. Uh, I don't know. I just enjoyed this so much. We're gonna do some of this stuff in between his plates. I'm gonna have to dig up all the alphas I used on here. And knowing me, they're probably in my downloads folder somewhere. I probably didn't compile them into a good folder location, but anyway, this guy's really cool. I gotta finish him out. I was working on a club for him too, but I should just finish the model first. Why am I spending time on a club? And I don't know. I did kind of a terrible workflow for all this cloth stuff. I think when I got to the retopology there, I just I don't think the workflow here was ideal. But we'll get through it. We'll get through it. I don't know. It looks cool at least. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to Lobster. All right. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Don't get distracted. Don't be distracted. Thank you. Thank you, Nate. Nice folds. Love the folds. All right, let's get back to it. Got to define all these plates. I think I'm getting better at this particular workflow. With these crustacean plates. I think I'm starting to figure it out. Starting to figure it out a little bit. Yeah, here we're gonna do some of those skin folds. Oh yeah, it's good shit. I don't know why that's so satisfying to me. Guess I'm just weird. And I guess it's like, I don't know. It's kind of thing that like conventionally, you know, you'd find not particularly attractive in people, you know, I guess. So it's funny that like I'm drawn to it in this context. Because you don't necessarily like looking at, I don't know. All right, let's move down to the, I think there's still some work to be done back here, but I'm gonna leave it for now. I think a lot of that we can do with our alphas, more in like the textural layer. Maybe I'll do, oh, this is kind of neat. We can actually emphasize this a little bit. So you kind of blow that out, and that's kind of a nod to the quad, a nod to the quad. That would be there in a human leg. The head of the muscle where it meets the kneecap there tends to kind of blow out a little bit there. So I don't know. It's fun to kind of sneak in some human anatomy references. All right, let's keep going, keep going, keep going. Surprised I've made it this far. I did not get a lot of sleep over the past couple of days. I've actually been going to bed and waking up with the sun, or trying to, for a week or two now. It's really, it's fantastic. I mean, it's always something I think, yeah, wouldn't that be cool to do that? And I never do, but trying to stick with it. And so far, I think it's definitely a better way to live, but it takes some discipline, takes some getting used to. I'm not confident in how long I'm going to be able to stick with it, but the hard part is trying to go to bed early, because that's the only way. It's the only way I'm going to get any sleep. Otherwise, I just wake up early and I go to bed late and I don't get a lot of sleep. Fascinating, I know. But all that is to say, I'm just impressed with myself for doing this for a couple hours, despite that. I'm probably gonna crash pretty hard this afternoon. Maybe I'll even take a nap. Wouldn't that be something? Usually not much of a napper. I really don't like it, actually. Going to the very weird brain space. It's not good. It's not pleasant. Kind of feels like death, if I'm being honest with you. And then I have to kind of come back and try to remind myself that I'm alive and that there's hope in the world. Telling you, these naps, they're crazy. I don't know, man. I'm pretty odd guy in many respects. Look at that. Look at those crunchy crumbles. Looks good. Kind of appetizing, actually. Makes me want to eat like a pie or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just pie deprived. Can't think of the last time I had a pie. Or, you know, a piece of one. That's a crazy thing. You can just go out and buy one and eat it. Isn't that wild? It's wild that you can do that and people don't do that constantly. Or a cake, you know? Or you could just do that. And it's not even that, you know, it's not like they're that expensive or anything. You could just go out and buy a cake and eat it. Not that I'm really a big fan of cake. I would probably prefer a pie. You know, if I'm being completely honest. And actually, honestly, neither of those are really. Now, get me some Ben and Jerry's mint mint cookie ice cream. Oh man, I will tear up a pint in one sitting. I've done it recently. And I was shocked actually because I because I don't know. Sometimes yeah, if I'm feeling like really really down or something, that's what I'll go for. And you know, it's much better than other things that I could be doing or have done in the past in that situation. So I'm like mildly okay with it. And it happens very, very infrequently, but I just go so hard with ice cream, and it's you know, it's quite a trip. It's really a good time. You should try it. You know, it starts melting too, you know, and then there's this urgency of like, oh man. Or like with the Gary Goldman has a great bit on this. Very very relatable. Which is like, you know, you're eating it, and I guess this is a symptom of eating it straight out of the carton too. But like, why would I take the time to put it in a bowl? You know, it's just me. Who am I? I'm not serving it to anyone. It's already in the container, so just eat it from there. But and you get down and you have these big chunks. You have to excavate them, and it leaves a hole. So you have to make it perfectly flat, and then as you're working down, you just keep trying to make the surface as flat as possible, and it never ends. because it can't be, because there are big chunks in it. So eventually you just eat the whole thing because, you know, you're compelled to achieve this sort of unattainable flatness to the surface of the ice cream. And also, you know, it's full of fat and sugar, and it's cold and it's delicious. So that's, you know, that's a big part of it too. But I was pretty surprised that I managed to get through that with really minimal side effects. I didn't feel great, you know, and that was on top of a pizza too, not a whole pizza, but I've done that too. So, you know, I guess the point is the human body is really impressive. And you know, frankly, I'm pretty impressed with myself for you know, for taking down that pint. You know, I think I really rose up to the challenge. And came out a better person. Yep, that's what I'm going with. Okay. I'm seeing some spiky bits here. You know, we got an opportunity to I'm gonna hold down Alt and pull out with the move tool. That's a good one to know. If you're using the move tool, you can do that, and that'll pull it perpendicular to the surface that you are moving. So I'm just gonna do that a couple times here. Pull out some bits because I'm seeing that in the concept, and I think that's a nice way to break things up. And although we should make those asymmetrical. Am I ready? Am I ready to do asymmetry? I think I gotta do it. I think I gotta bite the bullet. You know, here I am patting myself on the back for, you know, consuming a pint of ice cream, but, you know, I'm failing to rise to the challenge of committing to asymmetry. That's really, you know, gotta put my words to practice here. So, yeah, we're gonna do some asymmetry. That's gonna really help sell a lot of this. But you know what I'm gonna do though? I'm gonna make a backup. That's what I'm gonna do. Because it can't hurt. I'm also gonna make a backup. I'm going to save out another Z tool. I generally keep like a master project, and then I keep saving out tools as I go through. I should probably delete these from my project. Delete all. This ZBrush is so weird. This is like the only way to, that I found, the only way to remove a Z tool is you go into the tool and you delete all the subtools. Isn't that crazy? And then what? You delete the, I can't remember. Loincloth, go in here, delete all. And then you go back, yeah, and then the tool is deleted. What is that? That's crazy. ZBrush, what are we doing here? I don't know. If anyone knows a better way to do that. I don't think there is. You can't like right click on the tool and delete it. It's silly. All right, but I am going to save the project as well. I got a master project file. It's probably unnecessary. I don't know. But there's some things that only save with the project, so I just like to work from the project and save the tools as backups. I don't know. There's a million ways you can do it. All right. So I'm continuing with the asymmetry here. Let's just do kind of a similar Similar thing on the other side, but not exactly the same. So let's go to the move, pull it out, pull it down. You know, that's kind of the key to this sort of organic look is like, you know, it's almost like, let me get into some philosophical stuff here, but when you look at an animal or a plant or whatever, Plato, well, that's where it comes from, the Platonic ideal. Plato wrote a lot about this kind of stuff, but when you look at these things in nature, you see them striving towards some kind of mathematical perfection. You see like the imprint of it, or it's like, which I guess you could argue is kind of coded in the DNA or the hormones or how all that is expressed, you know, in an ideal environment or a restricted or, you know, controlled environment, you know, these patterns might be allowed to unfold in a near perfect mathematical way, but in reality, there's no such thing as that kind of perfect uncontrolled environment. There are always factors and chance and mutations and all this kind of stuff. So you see patterns in living things that are striving towards perfect symmetry or perfect, I don't know, perfect fractal geometry or whatever, but they don't, you know, it's always a little bit off, or there's some decay or some imperfections. And like those kinds of things will really, so like these two sides, it's almost like they're attempting to express the same symmetry, but they're not, you know, they're not actually symmetrical. And those kinds of things will really give organic forms some life to them. What did I just do? What the heck? I just deleted whatever I just did. Am I in the wrong subtool? Is that what's going on? Yeah. All right, settle down. Settle down, everyone. I'm just going to call this one backup. No, that's not backup. This is Lobster Man. Let's just call this main body. Gotta get better with my naming. Let's call this main body backup. And these are, let's call this mandibles 1. Oops. That is one thing that, you know, the coding stuff has taught me. Is like, you know, really getting specific and intentional with your naming of things, and organization and stuff. It's really important. Okay. And in fact, it's just the fact this caps is, there we go. And these are antennae. I think that's right. All right, back to this. Coming along, coming along. Let's save it again. Yes. Okay. Here we go. These are the final moments that will define a generation. Okay. Clayfold, blah, blah, blah. We already know what we're doing here, pretty much. Just repeating these similar patterns, blah, blah, blah. All right, let's go down to, oh yeah, what inspired this whole thing was, all right, so let's get the general shape first, and then we'll create asymmetry. Asymmetry in the, what would asymmetry be? It's like email, but electronic symmetry. We'll create asymmetry in the superficial details. I'm actually going to smooth out some of these in the lower subdivision. Again, try to point to the fact that, you know, there's some mathematics at play here that are smoothing out curves. There is an attempted expression of mathematics in life, in organisms. That's why calculus was called the language of life or something. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. All right. By the inventor of calculus, Sir Edward Calculo. I don't remember who invented calculus. Was it Sir Isaac Newton? Does anyone know? Does it matter? I think it was. I'll look it up and we'll find out if I was wrong. But I'm not going to do that now. You know, since we're talking about it. By we, I mean me. It's no fun. It's no fun when everyone's just looking things up all the time and knowing things instantly. Isn't that kind of boring? Isn't that kind of annoying? I don't like it. Stop doing that. Just live with uncertainty for a while. It's fine. You'll be fine. We've been doing it for thousands, millions of years. Just wonder. This is my big gripe with the world today. Just stop. Stop with the looking things up and asking your phone what things are. It doesn't matter if you're right. Just it's my big gripe for the day. Maybe that'll be part of this. Maybe every week I'll come up with a new complaint. That won't be hard for me, I think. You know. And then you know, just keep hammering on it until somebody tells me to shut up about it. All right, I need to think about these feet for a minute. What's going on, feet? This shape. This shape is a mess. I don't know. It's a mess. It's just wobbly and wonky and I don't know. You know what it is? I've been watching Curb Your Enthusiasm. Probably it's probably why I'm thinking in those terms. I'm channeling my inner Larry David. Just complaining about shit all the time. Great show. If you haven't seen it, check it out. They even did I think they did their last season last year or the year before. But it's been going since early 2000s. But yeah, he does that kind of thing. It's like I was just doing it. He's like, yeah, it's uh, just kind of non-committal. Nah, what's the deal with that? Why are you doing that? That's that's exactly what that is. I tend to cycle through TV comedies and then uh, channel um, the mannerisms in my daily life. It's very fun. Fun stuff to do. That's what happens when you work from home, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. And if you can't, well, I don't know. Maybe it sounds nice, but I'm kind of sick of it, to be honest. It's not natural. It's just not. You should be out there in the world living. I say that, and I'm just sitting here at my desk, continuing to do that by my own choice. But I don't know. It's weird. It's not. Kind of go a little bit crazy. You just talking to your computer all day, which again is exactly what I'm doing now, by choice. But um, but I do like doing this kind of stuff, and I mean it's better. Yeah, I don't know. In my mind, this is better than just doing it without. This is like kind of interactive. It's a very one-sided interaction a lot of the time, but I don't know. People pop in, and say hi, and that's nice. Semi-social. It's like post-COVID socializing. But yeah, I do miss. I never even had like a real office job. I never really got to that point. The studio position I've been doing has been remote since I was hired, and that was 3.5, almost 4 years ago. It's a lot. It's a lot of time to be spending in your life. 40, 50 hours a week, just staring at your screen, talking with, virtual representations of people. You just assume there's somebody on the other side, but I don't know. I don't know, man. I think there usually is. I have met people that for years I had only had a online relationship with. And that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool when you can do that. That's it's a neat feature of the internet age, I suppose. Not to say that you wouldn't meet those kinds of people anyway, but it's kind of funny. I went to Lightbox Expo. I went last year and the year before, I think. And it was it last year that I ran into a couple people that I had only known through online interactions. And it's really a trip, and people that I'd known for years. One person whom I worked with, ugh, sorry, um, and um, yeah, it's kind of funny. I like spotted him in a crowd We spotted each other. I was like, what the heck? Like, I know you, but I'm not. It's kind of disconnected from the visual I'm getting right now. I recognize your face, but all your proportions are weird because you're in world space instead of just the very specific camera angle that I know you from. But it was nice. It's cool when you can. It's pretty bizarre. A bizarre way to meet someone. All right, we're, let's say, mostly on track with our goal. All right, let's just try to finish the major block out on these last bits in the feet, and then I'm done for today. Just separate out these bits. I actually have other stuff to work on. Am I gonna do that? Maybe. There's always stuff to work on, but I don't know. I get lazy. I get lazy sometimes. Probably gonna go to a coffee shop. That's good for productivity. If y'all are wanting to work on art or you're working remotely or something, you know, go to your local coffee shop. Yeah, it's expensive, especially if you're in LA, like I am. But, you know, this is the world we live in, where you have to pay for the privilege to sit in a room with people. that's what you're getting. And I think it's good for, not only good for the body and the soul and the mind, but it's good for, I find it's good for productivity. I don't know, some people don't do well. They find the sound and everything to be overwhelming. But I bring headphones and sometimes even noise canceling headphones, but I also try not to do that. You know, I don't really want to be one of those people who's just sitting in a public space completely cut off. That stuff bothers me when I see it. I know I do it too, but it's like, you know, just, you know, you really close yourself off to the world when you're just always, you know, have all your senses blocked up by various devices. So sometimes I just try to sit there and I'll work on stuff, but maybe not listen to music, maybe just absorb the ambient chatter and sounds, and it's nice. Yeah, I don't do it that often because, you know, you do have to pay for some coffee or your drinks or something. Or if I'm going too late in the day, I may not want to drink coffee. You know, I'm trying to avoid caffeine after you know, after the afternoon. Come on, where's my damn standard? There it is. Every time I say that, I feel like I'm saying like, oh, where's my damn standard? But it's called damn standard. There it is, right there. You see? So I'm not just cursing in the wind. I think that's what. Yeah, it's damn. I don't know why it's called that. The default ZBrush brush. ZBrush brush. It's a default ZBrush. A ZBrush is a brush and also the program that the brush is being used in. Isn't that fascinating? I don't know. Maybe not. Okay, I'm really losing it here. But I think we've made some good progress. And I say we because I consider everyone who is watching this to be a contributor and a part of this journey. Even if you are watching later, which it seems like most people are, which is fair. You know, it's hard to, um, you know, commit to specific time, especially on a Sunday. You guys, you know, you got a lot of other things you could be doing. I understand that. I sure do. But, you know, it's better than a weekday, I think, or Saturday. Um, it seems like an appropriate time. And this is kind of like, I don't know, I don't have church or anything. So this is like, this is my, this is my church. It's just me talking into the digital void and creating lobster men. It's my kind of church. Maybe I'll do I don't know, maybe I'll do a talk again or make it a discussion video. I have a bunch of those that I did on my channel with other artists and stuff. Those are really cool. I think it's better to have a dialogue than just, you know, my verbal excretions. Um, I guess they both have their time and place, but I don't know. Maybe I'll see about doing that. There's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Um, I mean, I'm not really keyed into news or what's going on in the world, so I probably wouldn't. But I don't know. There's art concepts to talk about that are still interesting. Gaming, entertainment, media. What's going on? There we go. Ugh, I'm so excited to put all these little. I mean, this is just the beginning. I'm starting to do it a little bit, but like, look at this. Look at all these little crimpy bibbles. Yeah, no, that's exactly what they are. That's the technical term. We're gonna create all kinds of those. It's gonna be wild. It's gonna be wild. And then we get to decide which ones we want to incorporate into the topology and which ones we don't. That'll be fun. Jesus. I haven't even been thinking about how I'm gonna retopologize this, but it's gonna be wild, guys. Trust me. It's gonna be a wild ride. I'm still not sure whether I want to stream that or not. Partially because I feel like I'm gonna I'm reasonably confident in my topology workflow. I'm not maybe quite confident enough to you know, confidently display it to the world in real time, because sometimes I just still have to do like real time problem solving and strategizing. It's just I'm certainly no expert, but I think I get the job done. I think it's good enough for what it needs to be. Certainly not the most optimal workflow, but I also enjoy the process. So I don't, you know, it's a nice break from the creative decision making. You just get to kind of like, you know, go with the flow, the edge flow. You retopologizers, you know what I'm talking about. That good edge flow. That's good shit. Oh man, I love it. I'm loving this. I am loving it. But look at the silhouette. Look at that. Not so good. Not so good. Let's fix that. Yeah, it's really crumple crumbly. Yep. Yep. That is the technical term. It's a little better. We gotta let's straighten it out with some clay build. Sometimes clay build is really good for just kind of evening a surface. You know, when all else fails, you just get in there and you just start, you kind of sketch it into shape. Something about the way the brush works just tends to even out the surface a little bit. Especially here where like, I don't know, I guess I could try to smooth this, but it's probably better. Let's look at our foot silhouette. Let's compare it to the concept. How are we looking? It's pretty close. I can't remember if we decided, do we want the big toe on the outside or the inside? How does it work on our feet? Big toe is on the inside. I think that's what we wanted to do. Am I seeing that in the sculpt here? Not particularly. Does it matter? Not really. Not that much. I just want a little bit of asymmetry. But you know, I won't be upset if it's not. But let's just push it a little anyway. And I think look at this. Look, I'll show it to you. This is what I mean. Okay, so you could take this and be like, okay, yeah, it satisfies the general shape, right? It's working. But look at the distribution of the shapes. So we got this, 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 this. Okay, it's not exactly big, medium, small, but they're not the same either. But look at, I'm just gonna screenshot here. Can I do that? Whatever. I don't know how to draw in here, but you see here, we kind of like this bottom part and this top part, they're kind of like the same size, you know, and that's not, here if I do in red, it's kind of like this. So the one on the left is kind of similar. I mean, top and bottom are very similar size, so it's not good. I mean, is it a big deal? No. Who's even going to be looking at the bottom of the feet? It's just like, this is an example of this kind of design logic. Let's go down. Subdivision. Let's see. So, and let's use our clay build to kind of reinforce. Oh, my God, Zbrush. Your controls. Freaking terrible. All right. So I think it's just a more pleasing distribution of shapes. You know, it's not necessarily about big, medium, small. It's about size hierarchy, you know, and avoiding kind of, you know, similarity or adjacent similarity in shape, size, or position, or whatever. So, all right, that's enough of today's shape lesson. Oh man, somebody's playing music downstairs. Kind of stuff really drives me insane. You guys probably can't hear it. That's fine. All the more reason for me to go to the coffee shop and go outside. Okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. I wish I had a before and after. I don't. So, what do we still need to do? We still need some refinement here. We need some more bumpy bibblies on these lower legs. Probably going to go asymmetrical for that. We need to finish out our arms. We need some asymmetry there. Let's do a quick PPR render, see how this is reading. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I'm digging it. I'm digging it. I think we just need to keep putting more time into it. Got to think about how I'm going to approach these claws. I'll probably just resize one of them. I'll just find a, probably what I'll do is I'll find a point probably around here, beyond which everything will be, you know, symmetrical. So everything from this point downward will be asymmetrical. And then we'll just we'll probably just do a completely different pass on each of the arms, if I'm being honest. I really want one of them to be significantly different than the other. So, yeah. All right. I'm done for today. Thank you to those of you who are popping in and watching, and saying hello. And yeah, I will be doing this again next week on Sunday. It's 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, and other time zones at different times. I will not list them all. But yeah, we're gonna so what do we have left to do? We have to finish phase 2 of the sculpting on the arms and a little bit on the legs, but I think the legs are done enough ish. And then once we finish phase 2, we're gonna go into phase 3. Phase 3, detailing, sculpting, texturing, that kind of stuff. What else? Maybe we'll make cards. Yeah, we should make cards for all of the all this fibrous kind of floofy stuff. Eventually I'm going to figure out what that's called. But yeah, this is super fun. And I appreciate y'all tuning in. And